Welcome to another episode of Wrestling Tonight, live from the No Cell Studios. I'm the Ace of the Tavern, Acefield Retro, and as always, joined on a Monday evening by the one bad Chad. What's going on, man? How are you?
Going good. The week of wrestling has been, I feel a little lopsided. Like I feel like there's a big a big topic to discuss. A lot of other little news, but we try to keep you guys tuned into everything we can. Can't wait to get into all of it.
Just as we think the drama is subsiding, there's more drama peeking its head, and it's more people adding to the fold. We've seen new players involved in this drama. It's not just the same guys, and it's interesting to see how it's going to play out. It seems like it's inevitable at this point, but things have to get settled, Chad. It's like at this point, everybody has to just have a kumbaya meeting or something. Let's stop with the goddamn subtweeting.
I mean, Jesus, man, this is like the never-ending story since All Out. Like we gotta do something here, and we're gonna get into it. We're gonna break it all down, but I think we got a couple other ones first, right?
Yes, we do. Want to get into big story number one?
Let's do it.
Story 1.
Big story number one. And man, my heart and soul lies with Game Changer Wrestling. So seeing them making another international date warms my heart. They'll be going to Germany, and they announced they'll be making its Germany debut in September. And they'll be joining up with West Side Extreme Wrestling, aka WXW, for the World Tag Team Festival, held in September 22nd. So the GCW versus Europe event will also air on September 23rd. And they're going to be both in Oberhausen, Germany at this Tuberhall Hall, which is going to be a cool venue. I'm sure it's going to be aesthetically pleasing. We're going to get more information going up. I mean, we're seeing GCW expand into the international market. This is huge for them. We saw them make their debut in England. We saw them make their debut in Canada. And they also went back to Japan, and then they're going to go back in July. So they are all over the place. And this is just good for wrestling because as GCW is not quite up to the par of WWE and AEW, but they are certainly putting out a meaningful, polished product for fans as an alternative.
It's honestly impressive that not to be disparaging, but a glorified, just an indie company with not like some huge financial backer behind them has built themselves up to a point where they're doing big shows in Japan, and they have this Germany show coming up. I think it's pretty impressive for, this little Jersey company to be knocking down doors like this. So this is a World Tag Team Festival. Is there a tag team tournament? Have they announced any details with it, or?
Not yet. Fightful said they're going to be airing out some details as it goes on. And the thing is that I was going to say is a big piece of GCW's success as far as expanding internationally is tying themselves with other promotions that are local. And that is something that a lot of promotions, and this is just history speaking, that they want to do it themselves and they want to be sort of the headliner. But we've seen GCW have no issue working with DDT, going into other and working with H2O or working wherever that can be collaborative and then also highlighting their talent. So a weekend of wrestling being presented on that Germany scale. And also WXW gets some shine as well. It's a win-win for everybody.
And Germany, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I remember, I think WWE had some big successful like Germany runs back in the day. So Germany has like a pretty uh good foundation of pro wrestling. Have I'm not sure, has anyone really broke through into the American scene from Germany?
I can't think of anyone specifically, but as far as Germany's popularity, Bret Hart was said to like his merchandise deals were like highest in Germany during that run, and he was very popular internationally, specifically Germany. They pinpointed that number when they would do German dates, and then when they would have sort of metrics coming from that area, Bret Hart was more popular than almost anywhere, and Germany was the spot. So there is a hop, and that's the other thing to speak on. Speaking of the Wembley show coming up in the UK, there is a starving nature of these fans that want to see quality wrestling and see some of these stars that they only can see on TV. So when you get a guy like Nick Gage or Jordan Oliver and Nick Wayne, or even whoever they're going to bring internationally, Joey Janela, being the fact that you can see them in person, they're going to get big houses. And I think also adding to this Turbine Hall 2, which is, aesthetically pleasing, I'm sure it's going to be very awesome to see what they do as far as, because that's a big part of GCW. We talk about
Right.
Harpo's, we talk about Melrose Ballroom, we also talk about obviously everywhere else they work, it's a big piece of it. So I'm sure that's, you know, they're subscribe. It's a monthly fee, and that's all it is.
Yeah, I think the Turban Hall too. That's kind of how they've hooked a lot of people in. Is playing venues that are unique, interesting. I always go back to the show. I believe they did it in Wyoming, and it was I believe the show was called just Outlaw Mud Show, and they did it in essentially like a barn, and it was awesome. And then you got Harpo's, you've got I think they did one at the Roxy. Um,
Yep.
that makes it interesting. If the place still existed, I wouldn't put it past them to cram a ring into CBGBs. As tiny as
Oh
that
my
club
God.
was, I
Yeah.
feel like GCW would be made for CBGB. So that's kind of the attitude and the uh even the Ukrainian Cultural Arts Center that they play in LA, like all of these venues give it a unique vibe, and it'll be a lot of fun to see them go into new markets out of the states and enter into some of those more fun venues.
Yeah, the thing about GCW is that they know who they are. We saw them step outside of that for a bit and go to Hammerstein Ballroom. And to me, that although it was a cool moment for them to run that show with the history of ECW and all that, that wasn't quite who they are. They're a little bit more intimate with people on top of each other. So they have now leaned into that where they're not overshooting to want to be something that they're not. They're not trying to fill that void of being overtaking Impact. They know they're not that, but what they are this nice niche programming that provides consistent content in a lot of ways, a lot of content that's almost impossible to consume all of it. And to me, I mean, I also am so close to the product because I watch it every time it's out here, and every time they're here, I come and view the product because I love it. Is they are providing a true alternative, that this is something that you're not getting anywhere else, and they're really in tune with their fan base and also in tune with their identity. And that's all you can ask for from a wrestling company. They're never going to change. They are just going to be GCW to the core, and I love it.
I love it too, and that's kind of like dovetailing into what I was going to ask you. You set that up nicely. What is the end game for them? Like when I think of GCW, when me and Mike were doing the fucking GCW show and consuming it all and watching it all, and there was always like people talking, oh, they need TV, or there was those rumors that the WWE network bought them, and Brett Lauderdale was kind of teasing people with the Stephanie McMahon photos, and everyone was kind of biting on that. Me and Mike both called bullshit. It's like there's no way GCW is going to be on the network. It's just not in their nature. But what is next for them? Do they do? Because I agree with you. I think we are who we are. This is what we're going to do, and that's why their fans love them. That's what we come to know. I guess my question is, can they just do that? Can they just sustain what they're doing? Because I think any company, like, you do want to grow. You do want to get better and better, and uh, increase your fan base, and I think they are. Which maybe that's just doing bigger venues and things like that. But what is their? I'm not saying get on TV. I'm not saying get bigger venues. I'm not. But like, what is the like when Brett Lauderdale has a vision? Okay, this is the next big thing we want to do. Is it just continuing to go to places like Germany, Japan, and things like that, or is there another layer to how to make money? Does he see himself on a streaming platform where they have total creative freedom, where they can still be themselves? Like, what do you think the end game? Maybe that's not even the right word, end game, but what's the goals for GCW, or is it just business as usual for here on out?
I see that they've blossomed to a point where, I mean, my wildest imagination couldn't have taken me to where they are now. And I think in the wrestling landscape, they are what maybe ECW could have been if they didn't have the pressure to get on pay-per-view and get a TV deal and have all the pressure to compete with the WWEs and the or WWF at the time and WCW and be that third option. I think wrestling is so popular in a lot of ways right now. We're in a boom period that a distant fourth, maybe fifth, can exist in this world where they can thrive and be financially successful. And I think they're providing a good platform for people to hone their craft, to use it as a launch point to get to a bigger spot. As far as Brett Lauderdale's end game, that's a conversation that he would have to have. But I'd imagine if I'm in his shoes, I would want to be on a bigger platform to be the exact same product. So you got to find some media source, a streaming source to be willing to. And I understand Fight is a good relationship, and they honestly, I'm sure that's been amazing for him on his side that he can get exposure that way. But I think a big piece of GCW is you don't want to sacrifice your identity to fit someone else's needs. And if it means that in order to be on national TV, you have to tone down your product and we can't do the things we do, then you're not GCW. So in a lot of ways, they pack out buildings. They have a loyal fan base. They continue to provide not just hardcore wrestling, deathmatch wrestling. They provide really good wrestling with young, up and coming wrestlers. You mentioned the Jordan Olivers, the Nick Waynes. Go down the list. Blake Christian, like all these guys continue to show off. And I think that will add to the legacy of GCW going forward. When these guys are main eventing big shows, their legacy will always be tied with GCW. No matter what Jordan Oliver does, what Nick Wayne does, they'll be tied with GCW. And I think that speaks itself over time. And I think we're going to see this lore of GCW exists similar to ECW. I think, guys, there's certain guys that are just tied with ECW no matter where they went, no matter what they did, they're tied with ECW. I think that's the same with GCW. And as long as they continue this ride, I mean, they are continuing to move the goalpost further and further up. I mean, going international, they don't have to do what they're doing. They could be staying in the showboat Atlantic City, packing out that house and doing New York and doing Boston, Detroit. They're pushing themselves to expand in different markets, and the deathmatch scene is getting exposed in Mexico, England, Canada, Germany, and who else knows where they're going to go? I mean, there's a whole other market that's never been tapped into, and I'm sure that's out there. But as long as they tap into these local promotions, like WXW worked with MLW not too long ago for MLW Battle Riot 5. So there's already these inroads for these relationships to happen. And it's just a beautiful thing. So Endgame, I think, is kind of variations of what they're doing now, just kind of turned up to 11. And I think we're going to continue to see them expand a little bit, just where they're going. I think what they're doing, this has always been the path.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't want to see them take a TV deal where they have to sacrifice anything that they've done. I mean, what they're doing has got them to the dance. That's why we love GCW. I don't want to see them soften the edges. I don't want to see them smooth out any of the roughness of their show. Like that's what we like about GCW, the matches, the violence, the attitude. That's what we're here for. So it sounds like, and I agree. They are kind of they're definitely the ECW of today. Before ECW went and did the TNN deal and all of those things, but they're really they're kind of a proving ground. To me, they're the major leagues of the independents is what I always look at them as. I think they're going to break out stars. I don't want to call them the minor leagues, but it is like they are. I think they've leaned into the fact that they are a feeder system for up and comers, but at the same time, they are also a place to feature really, really talented, high end independent wrestlers who, for whatever reason, have not got that shot with the big promotions, who no one's taken a chance on. And these guys and GCW is willing to give some of these maybe more outlaw guys a platform to ply their trade. Like there's a lot of guys out there that work there, like, Effie, Matt Justice. Matt Justice is getting some love on MLW now, and he was in NXT developmental for a little bit. But, I like that GCW is there to feature kind of the the guys on the hero tours, the guys on the legend tours, when Scotty 2 Hotty came back and had that phenomenal match with Joey Janela, when they had Rock and Roll Express in Indiana um, I love how they sprinkle that in with the Nick Waynes, with the Jordan Olivers. But hats off to Brett Lauderdale though, because that's a tricky booking balance. That's a tricky booking balance to be like, because Nick Wayne eventually, we know this summer he starts in AEW. Is AEW going to allow him to still do those GCW dates?
I would imagine they do. I mean, they let Moxley do it for a bit, and I would imagine that we've seen guys like Lee Moriarty, and we've seen guys like last night I saw Leo Sparrow at Victory Pro Wrestling, and also VSK was in the main event. Jeeves K, he's part of the Trust Busters here.
I think they're I think Mox is a rare. He kind of goes where he wants to go, but I think once you get to a certain level, I think young guys definitely get a shot to go because Tony wants people to work as much as they can and get their reps in, and he can't give them that from their touring schedule. But I think if you become like a hot commodity in a major storyline, I think he gets a little more picky and choosy of when guys can go and work.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Tony has to be a smart businessman. We've seen progressive thinking as far as allowing his talent to go elsewhere, but maybe that's part of, we'll talk about story number 3 eventually. Maybe that's part of things that need to change a little bit as far as rearranging the power structure of who's in charge, because I think that might play a part where everyone feels like they're their own boss and they can say whatever they want, do whatever they want. And that's a good thing in wrestling, but some people do take advantage of it, as we've seen. But
Yeah,
this is good news for GCW, good news for wrestling fans. It continues
huge.
to provide an alternative. If you are into GCW, if you are not, you have to understand that this makes the wrestling world better because it's pushing everybody to be better, giving opportunities to work, and providing wrestling fans with content. And if you haven't been to a GCW show, if they come to your area, check them out because you guys will not be disappointed. I'm going to be heading back to the Tournament of Survival again this year in June. I'm making it a yearly trek to Jersey. I'm going to check out it because I was blown away last year, so I can't wait.
I don't know if you saw. I saw a meme floating around, and it got me excited for Tournament of Survival. And it was just somebody had photoshopped Alex Cologne's head on Michael Jordan's body, holding up 4 rings. And they were like, because Alex Cologne's been on a hiatus, he's
Right.
been off. So everyone's, he won those 3 Tournament of Survivals in a row, and everyone's kind of fantasy booking that he returns from his hiatus to enter the tournament and win his 4th tournament.
I'm here for it, man. Those being in the building for, I mean, it was like 8 death matches in a row. It was just the guys coming in, just sweeping up the glass one after the other. Up in the ante, the crowd was hot the whole day. It's a daytime thing too, because they do the GCW Deathmatch Hall of Fame later in the evening. So 1:00, you get in your seat and grab a beer and enjoy 4 hours of death matches and blood and carnage. It's amazing.
Yeah, guys. I mean, if you're just a fan of the mainstream national stuff you can pick up on your cable TV, that's cool. But if you haven't checked out GCW, man, it is the Wild West, the major league Wild West of the independents, and they put on such entertaining shows. And it's not. Don't just go by the clickbaity bullshit you see on Twitter. Oh, it's just mud show shit. It's just deathmatch shit, dude. They have phenomenal, exciting matches top to bottom. You got to go check out a GCW show because that, if any company is meant to be seen live, it's GCW.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say about this, and I think it would make for a good debate conversation, but if ECW, and I know Paul Heyman he was always going to shoot for the moon and above, but if ECW existed during this time, and I'm not saying GCW has the cultural significance that ECW is, do not take me wrong. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if ECW existed in the 2023 landscape with streaming available, with the niche market able to succeed and be able to be profitable, I think ECW would still be around as long as they were able to foster these relationships. We saw Paul Heyman foster relationships with WWF, so it's not like he can't. I think they would thrive in a situation like this because That's what they always needed. They needed a streaming service, that they didn't need pay-per-view. That would be perfect for ECW, and GCW's living in their legacy. And I'm not, again, not saying they have the same cultural impact, because people get so upset when you say that, but they are using the blueprint in a lot of ways, varying away from it, but doing what they used to do, bringing in well-known talent by featuring international talent. You know, like the Vikingo match that he had his tour in GCW, that was akin to what ECW did with Rey Mysterio and Psychosis.
Yep.
Like, you can't tell me it wasn't. So
I mean, the parallels between the two companies are incredible. And I guess my thing with Paul Heyman, that like you bringing up, if ECW was happening right now and Paul was in control, and I wonder, did Paul go to pay-per-view and TNN and stuff like that as a way of survival and making money? Or was that a way of just wanting to compete with the big boys, wanting to prove? Because Paul seems like he's got a guy like, we can beat them.
yeah,
We're just as good. You know, so it's like, if he was in the position of a GCW, if ECW had the ability to have that streaming service, would that be enough for Heyman?
that's a conversation for another time, but I think you're right. I think that's probably, knowing what we've seen from Paul Heyman, he always wants more, but
I
maybe he
mean,
would have,
dude,
maybe
the
he would have left it in
dance.
different hands, though. Maybe he would have
Look at
said,
the
I'm going to go off.
speech. Look
Yeah.
at the speech he gives. I think it was in Beyond the Mat, when he gives that speech that everyone talks about, the dance. This
Yeah.
is the dance.
Yep.
I mean, that's a guy who's like, F you, WCW, F you, WWF. We're just as good. You're not paying attention. We're going to make you pay attention.
Love it. Love it. Love it. But let's get to story number 2 here, and we're going to get into this right here. A lot to talk about.
Story 2.
Big story 2.
So we talk about super shows, and we talk about collaboration between different promotions. We're getting some collaboration between New Japan Pro Wrestling, All Japan Pro Wrestling, and NOAH. They announced their all together event in June. The last time this happened was back in 2012. And a joint event between the three promotions is a pretty big deal. First time in 11 years. We're going to get it taking place on June 9th from the Sumo Hall. We're going to get English and Japanese commentary. Going to be available on the New Japan World as a pay-per-view event. And we got the press conference with New Japan's Hiroshi Tanahashi, All Japan's Kento Miyahara, and NOAH's Kaito Kiyomiya. So the three main guys that are there, and they were talking about dream opponents. The last time I did this show was because they were trying to raise money for an earthquake that struck Japan earlier in the year in 2011. So that was the reason they all put their differences aside, work together, because let's not ignore the fact that there are differences between these promotions, that they've had difficulty working together in the past. And of course, they're competing for the same audience. And
Right.
Japanese wrestling is popular beyond means, and it's a different type of popularity in Japan than it is here in America. But this is a big deal. This would be like AEW, WWE, and Impact getting together and doing a super show. That's no joke about it. That would be what it is, because the egos in the room of trying to figure out how to make this work is challenging. And I guarantee, card-wise, we're going to see a lot of tag matches. We're going to see a lot of not as big a dream match as you probably want. But at the end of the day, the outreach and the notion of them working together speaks volumes about what wrestling can do, and has me dreaming of other promotions doing the same.
Yeah, it just shows you that Japan can put aside bullshit and ego for the betterment of the fan base. I mean, this is fan service. Like, this is dream stuff for the Japanese wrestling fan base, not just Japanese fans, but Japanese wrestling fans. This is like dream scenario. Like you said, AEW, WWE, Impact. If they put a super show on in the States, it'd be mind blowing. People would be losing their minds. Like, it would be the biggest news in pro wrestling for the entire year. So yeah, this is huge, man. And I'm with you. I don't think when you get three companies in a room, you have three brain trusts trying to come together and decide who goes over, who takes what. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they lay this match out. Like you said, I think we're going to get a tag team matches. We're going to get a lot of probably like multi-tag matches, 8-man, 6-mans. They're going to feature a lot of their talent. I highly doubt we get. I would be shocked if we got like big top tier talent going one on one. I'm going to be shocked if they pull that. If they pull the trigger on that, I'll be like very, very impressed that they can come together and get that done. Because Noah, I'm not too familiar on Noah's relationship as much with the other two companies, but I know New Japan and All Japan, they've been like pretty big rivals, pretty bitter rivals.
Yeah, with Noah, they worked. Obviously, Okada was feuding with Kato recently, so there is like an inroad there that probably helped this as well. But I mean, the last show we had 6-man tag main eventing the show, so like I would imagine we're going to get piecemeal dream teams of a whole bunch of guys. One guy from Noah, one guy from All Japan, one guy from New Japan on the same team. But just the fact that they're doing this creates potential in the future to do main programs, crossover events, using stars, and it's creating trust and good faith with different promotions. And that's the main part. And the last show was for a good cause. I'm not sure if they're going to do the same thing here for the All Together show. They're going to put it towards some good, good cause. I'm not sure exactly because the last time was towards the earthquake. They raised a significant amount of money. So the proceeds were total over 58 million yen, whatever that converts to. So it's a significant amount of money that they raised to those affected by the 9.1 scale on the Richter scale earthquake that hit Japan that year. So
I remember that.
yeah, it was. And believe it or not, when you see the year 2012, it feels like it was last year, but believe it was 11 years ago. I always do that and put it in context of like 1990 and 12 years before that in 1978. Like time is so interesting like that, but big deal. Over a decade has passed, but they're back in a room. They're going to do a show together.
Yeah, I think it's great for all three promotions because I'm sure there are people that watch Noah that don't watch New Japan. There are people that watch All Japan. Every wrestling promotion has their quote unquote faithfuls. So I think shows like this are really good for grabbing new eyes, grabbing new fans and being like, "Oh, who's this guy? I want to check him out." I think that's a good call on you to how they're going to piecemeal out like each team having a member of the promotion. And I think it's going to be a card where the allure of a card like this for me is just to see all of this talent together,
Yep.
but it's not going to necessarily affect each company's individual storylines per se. I would be shocked if there was like some monumental storyline defining angle shot at an event like this. Even at Forbidden Door, man, when they did that, there wasn't like they had good matches, but it did feel just a teeny bit isolated from the storylines of New Japan and the storylines of AEW. It didn't feel like there was some monumental shift that happened there, but who knows?
Yeah, the main thing to focus on is how they treat the world champions with, Kiyomiya and Sonata now being the IWGP world champion. They need to figure out a way to present them in meaningful ways. And on the same, that's the difficult part of making everyone feel equal. And at the end of the day, we know certain titles mean more, certain promotions mean more. And that's, when you look at world champions, Claudio Castagnoli is not on the same level as Roman Reigns. He's not in the same level as MJF. But the titles, if you're doing a joint show, that's always been my argument with the ROH stuff. You want to make that title feel, and that's also the issue when you have a guy work on both promotions. When you have, and the same thing could be said for this show. If people look at this person as lesser than, the title takes a hit and also the promotion takes a hit. That's why back in the day, you never really saw a lot of guys making meaningful shows. Like you said, tag matches are easy to navigate. You can have a guy from Noah pin a guy from Noah, or
Right.
you can really showcase people or do dusty finishes. And there's opportunities for other guys to get their wins back. Like, okay, All Japan gets a win here and New Japan gets a win there. That's really what gets stuck for these WWE, AEW, Impact potential shows. And of course, Impact would just be happy to be there. They'd probably be like, yeah, no problem. But I can't imagine that anyone would want, like, would AEW be okay with Roman Reigns being the headline guy? I just don't think that would be the case. Too many egos.
That's why I think, Hawk, for those who listen to the flagship, Hawk is in town, and we were talking about Hawk floated the idea, man, imagine some WWE AEW super show. And I got to be honest, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it because, I mean, yeah, if we strip away all of the political bullshit and we could just get the matches and know that the booking is 100% down the line genuine. But when I think of a show like that, and it plays into this, all together again, when I think of shows like this, when you're pitting champion against champion, dude, ego out the ass. You don't want your champion to lose to the other champion. Then you can't, it hurts you in your booking. Like, could you imagine Roman Reigns versus, I mean, it's MJF right now, but imagine if Kenny Omega was the champion and we get this dream match of Omega, Roman Reigns, and you get Vince McMahon and Tony Khan sitting in a room trying to come together and decide that finish. And I'm not talking like, let's get a screw job finish. I'm talking like really trying to hammer out a legit clean win. How do you decide that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to come in sort of the deal where we see things in the future, like Gato with New Japan. Like, I think they've shown good faith where you send talent over, you have guys come over and work a certain amount of time. Maybe part of that deal is like Brian Danielson working the G1, or you can have it. That becomes sort of the conversation that you may have a guy go over in the moment, but in the long run, maybe you benefit from it. And then it's challenging. There's no way around it because you have the AW championship, which I think is prestigious. I think they've done a great job with that. The Hangman stuff kind of damaged it a bit, but I think with MJF now, it is raised back to that level. But there's nothing more prestigious than the run that Roman Reigns has been on, just for longevity and for what they've created with him. It just seeing them in the ring together would be surreal, even if it is 6-man tag style. Like, you just have a team of MJF, a team of whatever heel from WWE on their side, and then also a heel from Impact, and then put them on the other side against the Bloodline or whoever. I don't know. It'd be fun. I don't ever think it's going to happen until long after this regime is out of the office.
You saying that just made me think of a debate question. Does a like with Roman Reigns, does does the allure of Reigns' title reign, is it the actual mechanics of who he's beaten? Is it the match by match that makes it so impressive, or is it just a booking tactic? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is it as simple as Tony Khan saying, hey, let's have MJF hold this title 3 years? If MJF holds this title 3 years, do you have to book it properly to get him to that point? Or is it just the length that makes it gain this prestige? You know what I mean? Like,
I definitely see what you're saying. I think part of the Roman thing, and of course we could get into that on another time, I'm happy to come on the debate, would
yeah,
be I think it's because of the people that Roman's passing. The Pedro Morales is approaching. He's not approaching Bruno, but close. Bruno's the next guy that he's going to get towards, or like a Bob Backlund, guys that have held those titles. The difference with AEW is that whoever's the longest reigning champion at this point, number 5, number 4, as far as who held the titles, as far as individuals.
5.
I know
I think
Moxley's been,
MJF's the 5th.
yeah,
Well, no. Fuck, the CM Punk Moxley flip
yeah,
flopping thing
exactly. Well,
just throws
individual
me
people
off.
that held it. So point being is haven't had there's not that old school mentality. And the title, of course, down the line, be like, he just surpassed MJF's run, 2045, when whoever is coming in, where -1 is becoming champion. We have a guy, he's like,
Right.
oh, he's passing MJF's historic run in 2023 when he was champion for 2.5 years. But until that point, that's part of the history, man. That was part of the allure of buying Ring of Honor, is you're buying history and you're
Yep.
buying legacy. And over time, AEW is creating it every single day. So every day, the titles get more prestigious, the company becomes more historic. It just takes time. You're an infant company that had nothing from the beginning, which also too, and there's another conversation, when WWE brought in the World Heavyweight Championship, they awarded to Triple H back in 2002 when they did the brand split.
Right.
There was the argument, it was the same belt. Why not just lean into the old lineage? You own the lineage of WCW. Why don't you
I'll
just say this is
never
the same?
understand why they didn't.
you own the same title as Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair. These guys have been holding that belt. It's the same exact lineage, and automatically it feels more important. But that's just that's just me.
The old school fan in me, I know WWE has been pushing the Universal Championship as the more important title. I know that's the title that Roman has held the longest, right? That's the one
Yeah.
he's had 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
That title means nothing to me. Like I think this Roman Reigns run has definitely added prestige to the Universal title, but the fact that it has no lineage, I always feel like the other title's more important because it's tied to history.
Yep.
Like AEW, obviously, they're creating their history now. So they're making it feel important. New Japan with their title, there's lineage there. This guy
Yep.
held it. He lost it to this. And I'm with you. Like when they took the big gold from WCW, like why not lean into that? I never got that.
Well, I think we all know the answer is Vince just hated WCW and its legacy, and he'll burn it to the ground. So, especially at that point, they were a year removed from WCW going out. So they were just like, I'm going to do every opportunity to bury the guys that are here. Only guy that got a good shake was Booker T. Really, if you look at the whole landscape,
Oh
Booker
yeah.
T was the only guy who kind of withstood the storm and became world champion. I mean, he had
Eddie.
yeah, but Eddie was presented for so bad for so long, in my opinion. He was like,
It
doing
was
the
a little
China
too late.
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, want to get into story number 3? I think we have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
Big Story 3.
All right, back in here, we got CM Punk in the news, and what else is new? We get a report saying if CM Punk is to return to AEW and they believe it's imminent, the idea has been to use split crews that would be tied into a rumored new Saturday show, which is all but confirmed, called Collision. He would be the featured star. This was covered in depth in the newsletter. Meltzer was conjecturing about it, and Alvarez was talking about it, and there's all this other drama happening, and I don't even know where to start here. I guess we should just start with feels inevitable Punk's coming back, right? Punk is going to be back by June. I think that Chicago date signs it there. The Wembley Stadium show makes it feel like he has to be there. But from to get point A to point B, to get from now until August and make things right, even June, if he's coming back at that Chicago show in June, where do we go from here and how do we get there?
Wow, what a strange road this has been. Like let's just track it for a second. So brawl out happens.
Yep.
Everything blows up. Danielson, Mox, Jericho kind of had rally the locker room, try to gain, the morale of the locker room, build it back up. Feels good. Everything feels like it's on the right track. Even gets to a point seeing CM Punk post things and seeing what some of the other guys are saying. It gets to a point where it's like, damn, I think Punk and these guys are like, they're doing pretty good. Like it feels like there's going to be an apology session between these guys, and we're going to get it back in the right way. And then Punk has the flip out a couple weeks ago. He posts the story. At that point, I thought it was done. At that point, I was like, this guy, he just buried any chance we had of him coming back. He killed it. He called out Mox. He called out Jericho. He shit on everything. And it's like, that never happened. It's almost like after that happened, that was so swept under the rug so quick, in my opinion, that it just, then all the rumors started really rolling. You've got FTR, Dax on his podcast, really ramping up, talking about Punk and the return. You've got even All Access has kind of played with the Young Bucks perspective of it without going into like naming the situation, talking about the details. They've talked about how hard that time was for them. Like it was the lowest point of their career, that all of that. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I think we called it when Wembley happened. That's when I knew Punk is going to be back. Like 100%. So Punk's back, essentially. Now we're getting this they might do a show where he's the star. And I don't know if you said it, if I missed it, it's a soft brand split is what they're rumored to be doing.
Yeah.
So the rumor is this is a soft brand split where I guess the people who don't have a problem with Punk go on AEW Collision, which is supposedly going to be a 2-hour Saturday show. I don't know if they've came out and said if it's going to be live or not.
It looks like it's because we got the Saturday, July 8th. It looks like a live show from Regina, Canada, which starts at 7. So it might be live 7 to 9.
Wow. I mean, if it's live, that's huge. But
yeah.
So you're going to put all the detractors of Punk, keep them on Dynamite, and then you're going to put all the guys who are okay with Punk over on that show. Now, the term soft brand split, I'm sure there's going to be talent who, if they want to float back and forth between shows, they can, but the people that don't want to work on the show with him, maybe they don't have to, which to me, like, spells disaster. Can you imagine a world where you have FTR on Collision, you have Young Bucks over on Dynamite, and we never get to see them have matches because they don't want to work on? I mean, come on, man. What is going on? Yeah, we kind of talked about a little bit, Ace, before we went live. This is like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Get people in a room, figure this out. I'm just totally not down with separating your talent because of one guy and people's perceived issues with him or non-issues with him. I do not like this move. I think it's childish. I think it's avoiding an issue. I think it's non-confrontational bullshit. You are running a multi-million dollar, possibly one day billion-dollar company. If you can't figure this shit out where it's for the betterment of your company, there's larger issues at play. There's way larger issues. What do you think about this possible soft brand split?
I think it's exactly what you said. I think it's just a person that's trying to accommodate both sides without making someone mad. And from the beginning, this has been sort of the issue that it feels like, for lack of a better term, it seems like the talent is now calling the shots. I mean, we kind of alluded to that during taking bookings, and that's been the good part about it. But a lot of them feel empowered to really that there's no person that's going to hold them accountable for their actions. And I'm going to go back to the Elite and FTR potentially at Wembley. And I love the idea of it. I think that is a real life blood feud that could spill over. And of course, FTR wasn't directly involved in the conflict, but there's been the dirt sheet rumors that they can lean on, that they have issues with the Bucks. And maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But as long as the fans believe it's true, it can make them want to get involved in this. But the one thing I'll pull from this is Dax has used his podcast platform as a means of working. We've seen that. He said maybe they'll go back to WWE using his storytelling, creating that fourth layer of whatever, making some shadows and making wrestling feel real again. My concern is if you're saying this on your podcast out loud, it means it's not really close to happening. Because if you're saying it out loud, that means that you're trying to convince people that it should happen. And if this was close, you would be, especially Dax, who wants to be working, he would keep his mouth shut because he would want it to be a surprise leading up to Wembley, that all of a sudden there's this huge reveal that the Elite were attacked by FTR, and there's the two trios going at it, and CM Punk and FTR versus the Elite can draw. But I think if it was actually in the cards as of right now, it would not have been mentioned. So it's almost like moving the ball into AEW's court or the Elite's court and saying, this is what we want to happen. If you guys want to play ball, I think we can do it. And it's almost using the fans' willingness to want to see it to push to get Punk back. And that's sort of, I think we can segue that into the tweets where people are saying this is sort of blackmail and this is sort of being manipulative, gaslighting. And we saw Trent, and these are all deleted, by the way. So Trent, hello, from now on, I'll be using this platform for manipulations. You got Jericho quoting an article talking about how Jericho would be willing to work with everybody. And he quoted and said, not everyone. Obviously, we can make our assumptions it's about Punk. And then we had Ty Mello posting a gaslighting thing where she said, "You're being dramatic. You're overreacting. Stop blowing it out of proportion. There's no love in your voice. That's what you heard, not what I said." And she put under it, "Be aware at work, at home, or with friends," in quotes. So this has been going on social media as well. And not to mention, we had this Deadspin article that came out where we had them calling out Punk for gaslighting and saying he is someone who hasn't been held accountable for his actions, has not come out and apologized publicly or otherwise, and he just wants to come back and act like everything happened, that everything didn't happen. And we're at this point where now it seems like the elite have to be apologetic for what Punk did. And we referenced the John Gresham thing last week, and you and I mentioned this off air, and of course it was insignificant compared to this. And it might just be because of star power and, you know, how it was involved with the world title scene and all that. But John Gresham and Tony Khan had a significant falling out at the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, to the point where John Gresham walked away. He was no longer with AEW. They buried it because, you know why? John Gresham took accountability, went up to Tony Khan and apologized. And he apologized publicly to Claudio, apologized publicly to Tony Khan. And it was it. This continues to be exasperated by everybody involved. There's an issue where it just won't die. This whole issue won't die. And I think as time went on, there was a quiet period where it's like, it doesn't seem as bad anymore. I think time heals all wounds. But the problem is the wound keeps getting reopened by people saying stupid shit on social media. And whoever's right, whoever's wrong, it doesn't matter at this point. But the wound keeps getting reopened. And now you're tossing new players into the mix. Now we're kind of making the teams up, the Survivor Series teams of who likes Punk, who doesn't. It's kind of revealing itself. And it's a mess because if you do this brand split, you're just acquiescing to it's never going to get better. We don't have adults that can work together. Can you imagine that back in the day, 1997 WWF, if they just said Shawn Michaels gets one show, Bret Hart gets one show, the two should never cross, let them do their own thing. That's not a effective business model. Are you hoping that eventually they wake up one day and say, "Oh, we're willing to work together"? Featuring Punk on Collision, that's a good idea, as long as he's on both shows. Like, he needs to be working programs with everybody, and you can't ignore the elephant in the room. Either come back and work that elite program, or eventually work a program with Kenny Omega. You can't just avoid people you don't like working with, or you have personal issues with. That's just not good leadership.
No, especially not in pro wrestling. Like, every matchup should be on the table. The matchup that the fans want to see the most, you should be able to deliver to your fans. That's what wrestling is. Giving the fans the matches they want. UFC has made a career out. Hats off to Dana White, because that guy's made a career out. That's why UFC blew up past boxing, because in boxing, there were too many promoters involved and the matches you wanted to see never got made. Dana White came in, put all of his contracted fighters under one promotion instead of dealing with, all of these boxing promoters trying to come together. And he made the matches you wanted to see. That's pro wrestling too, man. Like, the fact that it's one thing if we'll never get to see Kenny Omega and Roman Reigns. It's a totally different thing if we never get to see Kenny Omega and CM Punk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's bullshit. For a fan, you can't make that happen. And I'm not calling any one particular person out, but that's bullshit from all parties involved. The Elite, CM Punk, Tony Khan. Dude, come together. If not, leave the company. Somebody leave the company. I don't want anyone to leave, but you guys got to be able to do that. If you know the fans want this, like, come on, man. This is your profession. This is your job. I get mental health and all of that shit, but at the same time, like, is it that big of a deal? You got into a fight? You got into a fight. That's it. There was no family attacked. There was no one, like, maimed for life.
Yeah.
You got into a physical fight. You know how many times, like, I've known people to get into a physical altercation with somebody, and then, months, years down the line, they become buddies, they become friends. Like, it just seems like ego, and I don't want to give up ground to this guy.
I think that it could have been that, where it almost cauterized the wound, where you guys bond over the fact that you had this conflict. But the fact that, and this is just speaking to the time with social media and everyone's reactionary impulse statements come out immediately, whether it's late at night. And if you put it out there, it's going to get captured. Whether you delete it in 52 seconds, like Punk's story, you know it's going to be captured. And I think in a different time, this could have been worked out much differently. But these personalities are all very, very strong. And I've been critical on Punk's side, but I'm also, you got to be critical on the Elite side as well, where if I understand where they're at, because you see, if we can show Brandon Cutler's tweet as well, he's part of the Elite and he's not the main player here. But as I mentioned, that Deadspin article, CM Punk is gaslighting, not a great article, by the way. It's just like, it's kind of just fodder, but he wrote, someone gets it, saying that Punk is gaslighting everybody to come back and not willing to take accountability for what he is. And gaslighting is a very derogatory indictment of Punk's character, if that's what they believe he's doing. And if you get him to come back and he's not taking accountability for his actions, it's never going to go well. You can't just have two different crews running because this guy is out there. And I'm sure it looks great on paper because you're like, wow, we have this star power on Saturday. We'll see which one draws. We'll have real life brand split where there's actual controversy. And eventually, if they do get together, it will be awesome. But no, you can't do that, especially with this on the table. It just, you're bending to someone who was, again, this is perception from the outside, was a cancer to the locker room. You can look at the anecdotal evidence. AEW was a utopia. Talent was very happy. Punk gets infused here. Things go sideways, whether it's his fault or not. He leaves, seems to be utopia again. We're not getting all that shit cropping up again. So what's the common denominator? Either he wants to play ball or
you
not.
had your Andrades, your Miros, your Sammy.
That was almost in the same, but that was almost in the same time frame, though. Like, it was almost like around the same time that he was around.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm just saying the locker room was in chaos.
True, but I don't think you can blame. It's like Punk had no responsibility on Andrade and Sammy getting in
100%. But I'm just saying, like, if you look at the evidence, AEW was this blissful place 100%. To work. And then eventually it turned sideways. And I'm not saying it's his fault, but it's also maybe the example as a leader in the locker room he's setting for other people. Like, he can get away with it. He can do what he wants. Who knows? We don't know the story.
I'm with you. I think Punk definitely added a level of contention to it. But at the same time, like, I always knew, like, and you heard this when AEW first started, any talking head, any pro wrestling talking head on a podcast, news show, or whatever, the honeymoon phase will be over soon. With fans, with the locker room, this utopian locker room wasn't going to last forever without Punk. You know, like, it would have. Shit always happens, man. When you have high testosterone egos in a pro wrestling space, shit will go down. CM Punk probably accelerated that 100%. But going back to Brandon Cutler, I just got to say, the Trent tweet we showed earlier, Brandon Cutler tweet, like, dude, I love Trent. I like Brandon Cutler. Does a great job with being the Elite. I love his character in the Elite with the cold spray. I enjoy him, but guys, you're not doing anything to help the fucking situation. Let's be honest here. You're not doing anything to help it. And I've got heat with Cutler because he was talking shit on JR back in the day. Made that shitty tweet about Jim Ross. So I've had heat with him since then. Like, he sometimes I feel like Cutler feels like he's buddies with the EVP, so he can get it. He doesn't have that filter on him. He feels he has to say something. And obviously he knew it was wrong because the tweet came down really quick. If you're going to delete a tweet, you know you shouldn't be tweeting it to begin with. And the whole gaslighting thing, I have a little bit of an issue with that. Like, the whole Dax on his podcast is, and I love both teams. I'm not on a team, man. I love everyone involved. I'm a fan of all of these guys, but the whole, you talked about it, like, they're putting that out there. They're almost putting the onus on the Elite. They're sitting, because everything's kind of been a mouthpiece through Dax.
Mm-hmm.
And through press releases of someone said it's reported that CM Punk is willing to work with the Elite. Those reports come out. And then Dax is saying, we want to work with them. That's the match to do. So it's almost like they're putting the onus on the Elite, being like, hey, we'll do it. So if it doesn't happen, the fans will blame the Elite. They ruined it. And they're gaslighting. I do not think Dax Harwood is thinking in his mind, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say that we're going to do it, and then it'll make them look bad. I don't think this is some like orchestrated conspiracy amongst CM Punk. Like CM Punk and Dax has had this conversation. Here's what we need to do. We need to say we'll do it to make them look bad. I don't think Dax is that guy.
I agree with you.
I do not. And I think it's just real quick. I think it's bullshit that a lot of people on social media are going after him and accusing him of being that guy. I think just Dax seems like a very cut and dry dude. Like he's just saying what he feels. And I think he truly feels like this is the match everybody wants. He's an old school wrestler. This is the money match. We're willing to do it. And the Elite have remained quiet about everything. So we don't even know how they feel. Nobody knows how they feel. We haven't heard shit from them. Nothing. So we don't know if they could be willing to do it too. No one knows. But the fact that Dax and them spoke out about it first, people are now trying to spin it like the Brandon Cutlers and everyone. Oh, they're trying to make the other side look bad. So if it doesn't happen, I just think that's horse shit, man. I think he's speaking from the heart. He's saying what he wants. I don't think there's any ulterior motive. If it was Punk doing it, I think he has a little bit more of that clandestine cloak and dagger. I'm going to do this to make you look bad. But with Dax and Cash, I think they're just straight up good old boys. I don't see them playing those fucking political games. I really don't.
No, I agree with you. I don't think there's any ill intentions from Dax. And then we could play the clip in a second with Brian Alvarez, where it feels like caught in the crosshairs is the dirt sheet, the news sources of wrestling. Brian Alvarez and Dave Meltzer have been at the core of this since the beginning. They were targeted by Punk during the presser, and they played a big part of this. And Meltzer, his forum post, not even in his newsletter, he posted about Punk's issue about working hurt. That's what spurned on this next string of outbursts that we had from CM Punk. So yeah, and I am a big supporter of the newsletter, as you guys know, and and Meltzer has been overly apologetic, and he feels bad. Like he said that he feels bad because he feels like he spurned this, and no matter what, he's changed the course of wrestling history at this point. Because if you follow the tea leaves, it's changed the way things have played out. And people that rip on Meltzer, and there's a lot of them. Like anytime I post something on my Instagram, it gets hateful messages about Dave. Again, it's all in context. And Alvarez in this clip, I agree 100% with him. It's like people are getting mad at the news source, but they're only reporting what happened. And if what happened makes you look like an asshole, that's on you. The news source has to report. It can't be spun in any other way. And people can interpret what the actions were and what was said any way they want. And that is part of having a podcast. That is also part of being an outspoken person, whether you're honest or genuine and your intentions are true. Dax Harwood's putting himself out there because of the podcast format. And I think if he was doing this in a different, and again, he's entitled to doing that. And I think as you said, I think his intentions are just to make AEW a better product. But he's caught in the crosshairs with the talking heads, as you said, because he's become one. And that's like that is the very troubling thing about being an active person wrestling and doing a podcast.
I think he's about to quit. I think the show's about to go away.
Well, you also go back to the NBA, like Draymond Green was doing his own podcast, and it caught some heat because inevitably you're going to reveal something you shouldn't have. You're going to say something you shouldn't have because it's 60 minutes or an hour and a half of you talking, and eventually you're going to say something that pisses somebody off. And Dax went from one of the most beloved characters in the IWC and to one of this, maybe because of association with Punk or might be the podcast, has become almost there's a lot of negative feelings on him. And I don't agree with them, but if you look at his mentions on Twitter, and the IWC is a very they're Jekyll and Hyde, and no matter what, they're going to follow wherever the wind takes them. And if you go on Squared Circle, it's all Punk hate, it's all FTR hate. If you look at that, and that's crazy because this time last year, Dax was this like very inspirational story about being a guy who's overcome anxiety, and he has. But it's just crazy how perception changes over the course of the year just by who you're associated with. It's insane. But let's show the Alvarez clip and let's talk about it.
Trying to create in the minds of fans this idea that I don't like them. And I don't know why, because I've never been anything but complimentary. But the funny thing is, the more he goes on with this, he doesn't like me and he's got a problem with me. And this is like, I'm having a problem with this now, which I never had before. What do I have to do with anything? What do I have to do with any of this? You know, I'm also upset that I have to hear, oh, you know, it's Brian and Dave's fault that this happened or this No, you know what? It's not my fault. Anything that's happened that's caused an issue isn't my fault. If you did an Instagram post and then I reported on it and then there was heat or you got mad or somebody, that's not my fault. I didn't write the Instagram post. I didn't punch anybody in the locker room. I didn't get in a fight. I didn't do any of that. If you're upset that something happened that I reported or Dave reported, you know what the problem is? The problem is the fact that it happened. That's the problem. So I'm about done with it. And I'm about done with hearing that it's my fault. I don't like this guy. I'm picking sides. Dude, I'm just telling people what happened. That's it. I'm not picking sides. I'm not trying to start a fight. For weeks now, I've been having to hear this, and I've been trying to just stay out of it. I'm just not talk about it. And after a while, it was like, you know what? I'm not talking about a lot that I should be talking about. And I'm going to tell everybody what's going on that I know, and I don't want to hear about, oh, Brian this, Brian that, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Irritated.
Yeah, I've been listening to them lately, and they allude to knowing more than what they've said, too. I feel like they're protecting this situation a little bit. Like, there's things that they could be saying that may damage, which is crazy that they're not revealing, because...
Well, that's because they were at the crux of this whole issue where they feel like they can't say things because people are targeting them. And that's the crazy part, is they're being intimidated that they can't report the news because it's going to be interpreted that they go on one side. So they're almost filtering out the things that support the elite side because they don't want to fit the narrative. They don't want to report news that fits the narrative that they are just pro elite and they hate Punk and FTR. They are reporting facts of things that happened. It was the fight. It's the Instagram post. And right, as you mentioned before, the elite have been silent. Aside from this Brandon Cutler thing, the elite have been silent. We heard Kenny Omega reference it in an interview, but nothing significant. It just talked about moving on from it, and he's moved past it.
And he's kind of played with, I don't know if you saw, he kind of played on the bullshit from yesterday, because he was like, he posted some tweet that was like,
about the BCC. Yep.
Yeah, he was like, everybody wants to know about who I have a problem with in the locker room. I do have a problem with people in the locker room, members of the BCC.
Yep. So yeah, I think this is part of, and again, this is every news cycle, whether it be sports or politics or even wrestling. This is sort of what you deal with, because there's going to be people that get mad when they hear something that goes against what their perceived narrative or whatever they want to believe. People that they have this imprinted thing in their brain that no matter what, the elite are wrong, they're bad for wrestling, they are spot monkeys, whatever they feel, they don't like AEW. No matter what happens, they're never going to side with them. So if Meltzer says something that is supportive of them, they're always going to skew it as it's just him being supportive. But he's been critical of AEW. If you guys listen and read the newsletters and listen to the shows, he's been critical of AEW in a lot of ways.
Every week he's critical in ways.
Just about Rampage's viewership, Dynamite's viewership, talking about troubling things as far as that goes, and also talking about low quality matches. He was critical of that Kenny Omega, Jon Moxley death match and talked about how it was an embarrassment for AEW. It's not like he's always been like everything is hunky-dory in AEW, but the problem is if you can't feel like you can report the news accurately, that's a problem. Because if you feel like you are being harassed, or Alvarez seems like he's truly, truly upset about this. And they both, you hear them, they don't want to be the one that's to talk about the thing. It's like, well, the funny part is on the radio, they were talking about, all right, tell us the Punk update. And Dave's like, you know more than I do. You say it. And he's like,
I know.
how do I know more than you do?
Yeah.
They both don't want to be the talking voice that gets clipped and sent in a text message to Punk, Dax, or Cash, and then harassed by people. And
well,
it's insane.
What's going to happen is they're going to get fed up and they're going to start unloading everything and not care about who it affects. And I'm looking forward to it because I'm kind of with them, man. It goes back to that age-old phrase, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just delivering the news, dude. You did it. Like, I know this is a tale as old as time in athletics and sports. Athletes getting hot at reporters. I mean, how many people have went after Skip Bayless because he reported certain things, certain ways, like that's just sports. So I get it, man. They are taking a lot of blame and everything like that. But I don't know. It's such a, there's so many moving parts. I just tend to think like, just for me as a fan, I don't have a team. I was telling Hawk this. I don't have a team. I'm not Team Elite. I'm not Team Punk. I'm not Team FTR. I like all of those guys.
Yeah.
I'm fans of all of them. Big fans. FTR and the Young Bucks are my two favorite tag teams. Kenny Omega, one of my favorites. Punk. I love Punk. I love Punk being in this company. All of the bullshit that happens, all of the shit that has made the locker room, I do not like that. Does it make me hate Punk and go, I'm Team Elite? No, I don't give a shit. I'm a fan. I don't know these people personally. All I'm worried about is the product that I get on my weekly television. And I think in a perfect world, with all of these guys involved and all of these guys being pieces that Tony Khan can use to tell stories, that is what we as fans need. CM Punk in a best case scenario where everyone's getting along, CM Punk is a vital, vital piece of this company. Same with the Elite. The Elite is the foundation, the bedrock of this company. You can't get rid of anyone. I was FTR 4 more years in AEW. Thank Christ. I was terrified that at the proposition, I didn't think they were going to WWE, but I was terrified at the proposition that if it would happen, like, good God, can you imagine?
Right.
I want them all here. I'm not a team. I don't care. And I think fans have to take a little bit of onus on this too. The IWC going in the comments and just taking sides and going after the Elite and going after Dax and going after Punk. It's like, dude, that it's not helping the situation. You're the tribalistic wrestling fan is the true cancer of pro wrestling.
Right.
It's not anything else, because that's what makes the underswell on the IWC, on Twitter, Instagram, the underswell is what makes the Trents, the Brandon Cutlers, all of those guys feel the need to tweet and if no one was talking about this, and I get it, man, it's the day we live in. People are going to take sides. But I don't know. It just bothers me. But one tweet I did want to show that we have, we brought it up when we showed the Brandon Cutler retweet, but I thought this was a very healthy look at how this situation should be handled. From FTR, Cash chimed in because, Dax was getting bombarded, and we know Dax has the mental health thing that people were really supportive and he dealt with a lot. And Cash, his partner, his best friend, felt the need to come out and kind of defend him on Twitter. And I thought it was awesome. He said, Dax is one of the best people you could ever meet. Passionate about wrestling and family, protective over his friends, especially when people don't know everything. He's not afraid to speak up and not do it anonymously. honest to a fault. We all need to do better to fix this situation. Everyone involved. No fingers pointed. No one is completely innocent. I respect everyone involved and want the best for AEW. I'm tired of reading negativity from both sides, fans and wrestlers. Real life is more important. Enough.
Yes.
Spot on.
Yeah, I put that on my Instagram and I wrote preach because that's exactly what we need. That's a type of very calm, calculated voice that could potentially bring us as a bridge from both sides. And it feels like Cash has been out of the eye of the storm while Dax is sort of in the middle of it because of the podcast situation.
Right.
And I think Cash could be that bridge for everybody. He's friends with Punk, he's with Dax, and seems like if he approaches it from that side, because again, like looking at it from the side of no one is faultless, that is 100% true. And I've never said the elite are faultless. I think the situation gets exasperated because of the first punch thrown and all that. But as far as the stuff that led up to it, there were hurt feelings and things that could have extinguished the fire way before this got to a point, and we would have never been talking about this. Things that should have, and maybe in other companies that were more established, would have been gone. And maybe if Vince McMahon, we talk about the situation with Brett and Sean, but also you go back to Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy. I mean, Matt Hardy and Edge with that situation where,
Yep.
Obviously real life drama. Vince brought it right on the screen, got him in the room because of the established nature of this is how we do business. We bring people in a room and you're either doing business or you're not. And do you think Vince McMahon would ever have made a brand split for two guys that don't get along? Never would have happened. And I think this is the time, and we've mentioned this, is like there's been pivotal moments where Tony Khan needs to show his leadership skills and say, this is my company, this is what I want, and whether you guys want to do business or not, this is what we're doing. And if you can't make it happen, you're not here. And there's a lot of money invested in Punk. And now with the Wembley stuff, I think there's a lot of leverage on Punk's team to bring him back because they know he is their biggest star, bar none, that could sell out that place. There's no other person in that company that has the star power that he has, that he brings to AEW. He, no doubt. I mean, the fact that he hasn't been in the company since, September of 2022. And he's still a high merch seller. Pro Wrestling Tees still kills it. He's very, very popular. And their highest rated segments all go through Punk, and he shared those numbers and all that. There's a lot of momentum there. All I'm saying is just take a little page out of Cash's book where everybody just let's stop with everyone needs to just apologize, take accountability for what they did. I'm sorry for saying what hurt your feelings. I'm sorry for being unprofessional. I'm sorry for starting a fight. I'm sorry for this. Can we just shake hands? You don't have to have Thanksgiving dinner. You don't have to hang out. You don't have to drink tequila together. You got to work together. And that's it. And it's for the betterment of AEW. That's it. The betterment of the company. If you care about all elite 100%, wrestling, you would make it happen.
Well, hopefully, if the report is right, Meltzer's report says that there is a meeting soon, and it involves Chris Jericho, Tony Khan, CM Punk, FTR, and there may be others in there as well. Now, hopefully some apologies happen there. There's going to be something going down between, he talked, he called Jericho a stooge and a liar. So, they're going to come to terms there. I hope that there may be others in there as well. I hope that's the elite. Yeah. I really do. Because if that's not the elite, I worry that this meeting is simply a meeting to discuss Jericho and Punk working together and shooting that angle. And in my opinion, if Punk comes into this company, back into this company, and we go into a Jericho feud, which I'm fine with, and it's almost like I don't want them to say, oh, you talked shit about Jericho. Jericho's willing to work with you, so we'll play on the realness there. That way we don't have to play on the realness of Brawl Out with the elite, and this will fill that void. If that's the move that Tony Khan is making, thinking that that story will satiate fans, you're sadly mistaken. It will not, because I'm not saying we have to go directly into the elite story. I think it would be best if we did. I think that would be the most impactful way to gain eyes, is to go right into an elite Punk story. But if you wanted to take time to get to it, I think it's killing killing it a little bit doing it that way. But if you're just planning to book other things and never give us that, it will always be the big elephant in the room that everyone wants and we never get. And I think it'll be a detriment.
Yeah.
I think it'll hang over the company as a detriment if that's never made in some way.
You think the only way to get rid of it is to fold it into what their storytelling is and appease people that want to believe it's a work and turn things into a work and where it becomes part of the story. So they're talking about your product instead of talking about the outside drama.
Yep.
So if there's a possibility of making this AEW canon where you can lean on it, that's the only way to benefit from it because people are always going to talk about it. And the same thing when we talk about, again, going back to Brett and Sean, because there's so many parallels. We talk about the Montreal Screwjob. We talk about all the issues they had in the back, but mostly we talk about their matches. We talk about the things they've done in the ring, their meaningful programs, the moments that happened on camera. So I'm hoping we get to a point where we could start looking at this Elite Punk thing and talk about what happens on camera and the meaningful, them standing across the ring from each other with the Elite, in front of Wembley, in front of 60K or 70K, whatever it winds up being. That's what I want this remembered for. And then we could just look at this as, there'll be documentaries, Dark Side of the Ring, all that, but it becomes more of they got past it. This just made them stronger. And I'm hoping right now we're at a crossroads. We don't know exactly where it will end up. And for a company that's still in its very emerging stages as a 4 years old, 5 years old, it's a pivotal moment for their growth. They have to show that they can weather this storm because they're still very much in the middle of the storm.
Could you imagine? Perfect world, Wembley Stadium, 80,000, Kenny Omega standing in one corner, CM Punk standing in another corner, staring each other down. Right before the bell rings, and the bell rings, and they're just looking at each other. Could you imagine the energy in that place?
Yeah.
I mean, those are the moments, man. Those are Rock Hogan at Mania. Those are, even Danielson Omega at Arthur Ashe. I mean, it made the hair on my arm stand up. Those are the moments we live for. That's what we want to see. You have to turn all of this negativity into a moment like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not turn it into a moment like that will live forever, it's such a waste, man. It's such a waste. Like, you have to... It's such an overused phrase that something to wrestle beat into the ground, but turn chicken shit into chicken salad. Like, this is the epitome of that.
Yeah.
If you don't do something with this, you have squandered such an opportunity. And I think I told to Sneed about it. I was like, this is something that you can't... This is so big, you can't even do it in a one pay-per-view cycle. It can't be a 2-month program. This is something you could drive this for a while, and it could really be that big story that they've always lacked that would bring in new fans. And Tony can avoid it and search for other things to fill that void, but it'll never be that. And if you constantly run away from it, and shame on any of them, Punk, FTR, the Elite, Tony, shame on any one of them who keeps that from happening. As a fan, like, come on, man. Like you said, Ace, come together, apologize, be the bigger men, everyone come in a room, let's make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this situation like a dirty fish tank. And eventually, if you ever owned a fish tank, they're hard to manage and stuff. But the muck settles at the bottom. You continue raking the bottom of the gravel. It continues to muddy the water. We just need the filter turned on. Let's clear out the shit. Everyone air out their concerns. And let's make this a beautiful place to work again and change. Because at this point, the story hasn't been written where we could sit here and say this was the demise of Punk's time in AEW, but it could change everything. It benefits him to come back because his legacy is tied with this moment. It could be he burned this bridge, he never came back, that's how his wrestling career ended, or he was able to make amends, get in there and have some more memorable moments and add to the legacy that he already had. And it just is a blip on the radar. Right now, this is the end of the story. It doesn't have to be, though.
Right. Yeah.
But we have some quitters to get into. I mean, let's get into them.
Yeah. Let's get into the quick hitters.
Quick hitters.
All right. So prior to the Punk story dropping, we had this story as a number 3 and it seems so far removed from it. But Rey Mysterio was on the Logan Impulsive past 2, continuing the feud with Dominic and wanting to put his mask on the line against Dominic. And he said, maybe I put my mask on the line against his hair, which is some lucha culture. And if I lose, I take my mask off. And if he loses, he shaves his hair off. That might be interesting. Had me thinking about all the past Rey hair versus mask matches or mask versus mask matches. The most famous one, he's been involved in 10. I assume this is going to happen because if you make the challenge and put it out there, especially on a Logan Paul show, he is a WWE employee. This is almost just like might as well be happening in the ring. We're going to get there. And I think SummerSlam, and I think we may, I don't know if Dom gets his head shaved. He has a lot of hair now, but I think that's the end of the story when Rey wants to retire. I think he's going to lose his mask and give it back to Dom, and he's going to earn it. I see that. And I'm not sure right now, Dom's too much of a heel to get the mask, but I think eventually he's going to earn the mask and wear it.
That's the way you have to do it. What a storybook ending. You just have to, but I only want to see that as if this is Rey's final match. If it's Rey's final match and he's going to pass his mask on to his son, man, you couldn't write it better, especially for Rey. And that is like such an honorable way to go out as a luchador. Like it's tied into that culture to be able to pass that mask on to your kid and say goodbye. Man, doesn't get any better than that. I know he lost his mask in WCW, which is like, I hated that. But man, it would be big Rey fan. I like what Dom's doing. It almost feels like it's got to be a Mania match, but I don't know if Rey wants to stick around for another Mania. But when you look at a WrestleMania 40, I feel like that's the type of match that fits. That's the type of match that has the weight that feels like it should be at a Mania 40, not a random Mania. Like Mania 40's got to have those high stakes, big monumental matches, and Rey putting his mask and career on the line against his kid. If you can have them go their separate ways and do some other little things and get that to WrestleMania 40, I would rather see that at WrestleMania 40 than SummerSlam.
Yeah, you referenced the losing the mask in WCW. That's back at WCW Super Brawl 99 in a tag match, Rey and Conan teaming up the Filthy Animals against Hall and Nash. The interesting part I pulled from this was he had to get permission to put the mask back on in 2002 when he came to WWE with the Lucha Libre Council. So when he wanted to work Mexico for the WWE tour, inevitably when they do the international dates, he had to get permission. So be interesting to see if Dom goes through the same channels as well. Like eventually they're going to go back to Mexico. I wonder if he has to have some filing under the Lucha Libre Council to make sure he's allowed to wear that specific mask. It's very regulated, which is, as I got through the weeds of talking about it, and the famous matches, like go back to the Halloween Havoc match in 97 with Eddie Guerrero is probably the most famous. He retained his mask. But I forgot about the one he had with Kane in 2008. And then also a mask versus title match against Jericho back in 2009. So there's been a couple of these, but what better way to go out than losing your mask to Dom? He looked awesome wearing it at WrestleMania just for the entrance.
Yeah, I think that's where you got to go. That's a fun destination if they can get to it.
So also in the news, we had Aussie Open winning the IWGP tag titles last week, but they also became double champions in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis defeated Hiroshi Tanahashi and Okada and the champions, the Motor City Machine Guns, in the main event of Saturday's Capital Collision event, which took place in DC, to win the Strong Tag Team titles for a second time. The finish had them pinning Chris Sabin after hitting the Coriolis. This ends the Motor City Machine Guns run with the strong openweight tag team titles. 170 days. They took the titles
Pretty
from Aussie
good.
Open at the Rumble on 44th Street back in October. But this is, we talked about FTR's year last year. It feels like we're on the precipice of Aussie Open being the tag team of 2023 and kind of dominating. And I'm here for it. They're one of my favorite acts in all of wrestling. They got me to tune into Rampage on Friday because I knew they were going to be on.
Yeah, they're killing it, man. They're a lot of fun to watch. And I saw Ospreay tweet about them, how he's been saying it, and now they're getting their just due. So it's fun watching Aussie Open kind of blossom.
So speaking of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Capital Collision show, we have a new member joining the Bullet Club, and it's Clark Connors. So after David Finlay defeated AR Fox on Saturday's show, he called out Connors, and Finlay said that before Bullet Club only aimed for people to sell t-shirts, but now he wants savages who wins titles, and he offered a spot, and Connors accepted, officially joined the stable. And we're seeing a shakeup of the Bullet Club, Chad, at this point. So we've seen Finlay becoming the head guy, and he's made some significant changes. At Sakura Genesis earlier this month, Finlay, Kenta, and Gato all turned on ELP after a tag team match. Taji Ishimori came to the ring, acted concerned, then turned on ELP himself, casting him out of the group completely. We're seeing a shakeup of the Bullet Club, and I know we have the Bullet Club Gold over on AEW now with Juice Robinson and Jay White. But I like this because Bullet Club was stagnant as all hell for a bit, and Finley's igniting some new energy into it.
I thought this was awesome. I'm a big fan of Clark Connors. If people remember, Clark was involved in the the 4-way at Forbidden Door to crown
Absolutely.
the All Atlantic title.
Yep.
And he's popped up on ROH too, I believe. So
Yep.
He also just re-signed with New Japan. So he re-signs with New Japan and then joins Bullet Club. It seems like they have big things in store with him. David Finlay rocking the beard.
Looking good.
Looking good. He looks like a leader. And I love that quote that he gave. Like, what was it, Ace? They're looking for killers, or
they're looking for savages who win titles instead of selling t-shirts. That's what the old Bullet Club mantra was. They want to have savages that dominate wrestling. So I love the mantra.
Yeah, it's awesome. And maybe we're queuing up old school Bullet Club versus this Bullet Club Gold at Forbidden Door 2. Who knows?
So we also have Jeff Hardy making his return on AEW Dynamite. He came out to help Matt. He's been gone for quite some time, almost a year, believe it or not. June 14th, he was arrested in Florida on a felony DWI charge. AEW was always supportive in getting Jeff Hardy back and getting him to be sober again. He entered a plea of no contest in February of this year to the charges. He was sentenced to 38 days in jail, which he already served, 2 years of probation, $4,500 in court fees, a 10-year suspension of his driver's license, a court-mandated school or DWI program and community service. He's a repeat offender, but all I ask of people, and again, don't drink and drive. For those that have lost people in their lives from stupid acts like this, he was held accountable. He did his time. He apparently went through all the motions, and I trust the system in that way that they could make that happen. But all the same people talking shit about Jeff Hardy coming back to AEW are holding the ball sack of Jimmy Uso, who continues to get more and more DWI. So you can't speak out of both sides of your mouth. You're either going to hold both accountable or you're going to hold, one or the other.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I don't want to hear anyone talk shit on Jeff Hardy if you're not talking shit on Jimmy Uso. That dude, when you think about Jeff Hardy, he's had a lot of them over the course of way more years than Jimmy Uso. Uso, it blows my mind. The lack of
suspension either, too.
Yeah. The lack of accountability there is shocking. It's because he's attached to Roman, but that's a whole different situation. But yeah, I'm glad Jeff's back. He looked healthy. I think there's a possibility you maybe see them get a little run as a tag team, like that never got to happen the first time. I was talking about it with Hawk, how we were thinking, like, who's FTR got at Double or Nothing?
True.
Like, could they? We've got 6 weeks, 6 Dynamites to go before Double or Nothing. So it's like, I mean, that is a dream type of match. for FTR at least. So 2 North Carolina tag teams going at it. Who knows? I want to see Jeff go out on top, and the way Tony has handled Sting and the way he's treated a legend like him, it gives me hope that we can get the Hardys a proper send off, as they move into the later, the next chapter of their wrestling career.
Absolutely. And, obviously I think they were supposed to win the tag titles in that ladder match right before all that went down. The Bucks took titles and then went from there for that short run. But we talk about Forbidden Door, which is happening this summer, and it was originally going to be in Chicago. It was moved to Toronto, and everyone's talking about bigger arena or why they're just moving away to expand. But we're going to get some shows in Chicago leading up to Forbidden Door, and it will be specifically the Go Home show from the Wintrust Arena and Rampage being filmed there. We have the full schedule for all of Dynamite through the rest of the year. So there's some significant dates that I want to bring to your attention. We have a whole in July, a Canadian tour. They go from Alberta, Canada, and Edmonton to Saskatchewan to Saskatoon. They go to Calgary at the Saddle Dome, and then they go to London, England for the August show at All In. And we also get, through June, they also have some dates. Toronto, June 25th for Forbidden Door, and then they go to Hamilton the 28th, and then they run the rest through Canada. So we talk about GCW expanding. We've had some Canadian dates. Obviously, they made their debut with that awesome match for the trios titles. But some good dates here. If you look at some of the arenas they're running, they're bigger. They're more they're more impressive, I would say, than what they were doing as far as touring goes. And I guess you can credit guys in charge of that. You got to give Jeff Jarrett a little bit of credit here.
No, can you do that? It doesn't hurt you to give that credit out, Ace?
I'm okay with them outside of the screen.
No, I'm with you. I think the schedule looks awesome. They kind of like cracked the door open for Canada. Now it seems like they're going full tilt into it. The fact that they're going to the Scotiabank Center for in Toronto for Forbidden Door 2 is exciting. And the most exciting thing about Wembley, outside the fact that it's their first foray doing a stadium show, the exciting thing after that is they're cracking the door open on Europe. Like, what's next? Like, are we going to get more European shows? So
yeah,
I think stuff like that's very, very good signs. And it kills me. I saw some meme about, somebody posting about how fans are always like, oh, Dynamite ratings are in the toilet, Rampage ratings in the toilet. Meanwhile, Warner Brothers Discovery, here's another 2-hour show on Saturday.
Right.
Like, don't believe the hype, guys. They're doing okay.
And stop looking at it through the lens of the Attitude Era where 7 million people were watching wrestling. It's not at that point. Because again, we talk about context. That's not what the landscape of entertainment is. The numbers that AEW is doing is far better than anything else they could have in that slot.
Exactly.
So we also have Logan Paul resigning with WWE. So ESPN reported more information about Paul's contract. Paul Levesque, also known as Triple H, noted that Logan Paul signed a multi-year deal, and the report noted that Paul is committed to more WWE appearances going forward. And he has this quote that pretty much says, very status quo, that he feels grateful and wants to win gold. You guys mentioned on the flagship that he wants to win gold and leveraging potentially to be, whether it be a mid-card champion or eventually the WWE champion. Do you see him doing something like that? If he's there multi-year and he's going to work a full-time schedule, I say, why not? He's proven himself to be very, very good in the ring. He's had some good moments, and especially he's going to get better over time too. People forget this. He's still sort of a novice at this, which is insane.
Multi-year deals, say it's a 3 to 5. If it's a 5-year deal, 3-year deal, 100% I could see him being IC title holder. 100% I could see him holding the US title, or even in a tag situation. I could see it. I'm not buying him as the world champion.
Well, all right. Fair enough.
Not like, dude, you can't come in on a 3-year deal. Yeah, you're talented in the ring, but I don't know, man. I wouldn't. The belt that just has been held for 3 years by Roman Reigns within the next 3 years goes on Logan Paul. Nah, son. I'm not in on that.
So the one title he won't win is the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship, and Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan are now the new champions. most notably on Raw, Trish Stratus turned heel after teaming up with Becky Lynch after Lita was attacked. I guess we can assume she attacked Lita in the back. I thought it was a really poorly done heel turn. Trish was not impressive at WrestleMania. This run, she's going to be here for a while, so be it. But to have a legend turn heel in this capacity is weird. It's a weird booking move. Maybe I'm too removed from it, but it just feels she's just not at the level of the other women in the company, and she's going to be feuding with Becky Lynch. Just not. No, I don't think it was great.
Yeah, my Trish just comes back and makes the turn. Like, I'm not a modern day fans. We know Trish, but there's a lot of fans that are like not tapped into that. Like, it didn't hit for me. And I'll be honest, the women's tag titles don't hit for me at all.
Oh, they don't at all. No,
it's awful.
Yeah.
Like, everyone wants to talk about titles, too many titles here, too many titles there. That is the most underutilized belt in wrestling, is the WWE women's tag titles. It's never been used properly for me. There's not a tag division. So anything with those belts just seems like, those seem like props. There's
100%.
no history, there's no prestige, there's nothing to them to me.
Yeah, it's like instilling a cruiserweight division without any cruiserweights. But we have a backstage update on Santana's contract with AEW. So we obviously saw Santana suffer a severe knee injury at last year's Blood and Guts. It seems as though, at least for right now, Santana remains under contract for AEW, according to recent reports from Fightful. He's still under a contract with the company and has been paid for duration of his injury. Mostly, this is sort of a surprise to many fans familiar with Santana's morale ahead of his injury. Apparently, the former Inner Circle member was seemingly counting down the days until his contract expired in tweets. The issues with Ortiz. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, Santana and Ortiz, it sucks because they were a great tag team, never got their flowers officially from AEW being tag champs, but it seems like Santana's still there and maybe rehabbing through the injury.
It bums me out, man. I was so excited when they went to, I believe they debuted on the first episode of Dynamite in DC. They came out at the end in the president masks. I always thought that team deserved a title run. Like, they deserved a time with the straps. I hope Santana and Ortiz, I don't know what their issues were. I don't know if it ever came out. Like,
no, it never did. It's a personal issue between the two of them. I don't know.
I really hope that gets worked out, because I've always heard Cash and Dax say that was one of the teams they wanted to work a long program with. Man, a returning Santana and Ortiz in the tag division, that would breathe such fresh air into that division. Because I was thinking, me and Hawk were talking about the other day, like, where are the heel tag teams?
Yeah.
Where are the heel tag teams? We need some good heel tag teams, and all the best to Santana. I hope he comes back from it better than ever, because I'm a big fan of those guys. But hopefully they can. I like Santana. I like Ortiz, but I'd be lying if I said I like them better separately. I like them together.
So speaking of tag teams, Nick Wayne, one half of the GCW tag champs with Jordan Oliver, was announced that he'll make his AEW Dynamite debut for the Defy Championship against Swerve, which will be a rematch from the event they just worked, and a sick match they just had. And the first match is set for July 12th, as Swerve Strickland will defend his title against Nick Wayne. At Defy Wrestling's event on April 8th, 17-year-old Wayne defeated Strickland to win the Defy Championship. Following the bout, Strickland grabbed a microphone and announced that he would be Wayne's first opponent on July 12th in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Easy for me to say, pal, just one day after Wayne turns 18. So Nick Wayne is the champion, my bad. So he is the Defy champion, and they're going to have the rematch. I love Swerve Strickland. I love Nick Wayne. I love that we have this like time to look forward to Nick Wayne being involved, and it's far away enough where like everyone's been looking forward to him coming on July 12th.
And I've heard, I think the report is out that maybe it's for the Defy title on Dynamite, or maybe not. So that's like still, I guess, up in the air.
He challenged him on the show and said, I want you at
my rematch
Dynamite for the title. So you can assume it's for that.
I'm assuming it's for that, but yeah, I can't wait to see Nick Wayne finally debut on Dynamite. I think they're going to put a lot of steam behind this kid.
Absolutely. Eric Young, little contract update from him. He's been under contract with WWE since November 1st, but has yet to appear backstage or on screen at all. We last saw him at Impact as the leader of the faction Violent by Design. And rumors, we talked about with Triple H back in charge of creative, that we might have seen Sanity on our screen again, which was their, a little blip on the radar, but very popular. But Eric Young, talented dude, just not involved in creative right now.
Yeah, I hate for a guy kind of at the stage he is in his career. I hate that he's not being used because I felt that was one guy when he went to the main roster, he literally never saw the light of day on the main roster. And then when he went back to Impact, he kind of had a breath of fresh air, some revitalization going on. And now going back to the company, he's been sitting on the shelf since November. Maybe they're just waiting to pull the trigger on him, but like, let this guy work, man. I hate when wrestlers have such a finite time. And when you just put a guy under contract and you don't use him, and every promotion does it. It bothers me. Like you're letting a guy's golden years pass us fans by, and I think that's promotional malpractice.
So we also have the young Billy Starks, who appeared on AEW recently, challenging Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship. She's officially all elite, according to Tony Schiavone on his recent "What Happened When" podcast. He revealed that Billy Starks signed with AEW, and we talk about young talent being Nick Wayne. Billy Starks of the same ilk. I think she is just 19, 18 years old, something like that. So awesome to see that they're locking up young talent.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch Nick Wayne and Billy Starks kind of grow together in these two divisions.
We also have AEW re-signing Brian Cage. We mentioned this on Honor Society about him. They're working on a handshake deal for a bit, but it seems like he's officially there, and the booking now makes sense that they retain the 6-man tag team championship back at Supercard of Honor. And his run with the Embassy, now it's tied with Swerve. I like what they're doing with the Embassy and the Mogul affiliates because it's better than what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw yesterday or early this morning when I was just browsing. I'm wanting to say he signed like a 4 or 5 year deal. Like
Interesting,
because a lot of times we were seeing 3-year deals with AEW, but 4 or 5 years for Brian Cage. It's like, man, they've got plans for this guy.
So speaking of plans, there's some plans just in case Vince McMahon falls off the rails again. In an article by the Hollywood Reporter profiling the recent merger with WWE, Endeavor, UFC, it was reported that a copy of McMahon's latest contract with WWE, which was just signed prior to the merger, was made available via SEC filings. And it says a conflict of interest and code of conduct, which essentially, if he wants to continue to work with WWE, it's contingent on him staying in line, complying with this code of conduct, as well as the company's equal opportunity and non-harassment policy. They didn't just come out and say it, Chad, but if McMahon steps out of line and does something again, it could potentially spell trouble for him and being removed. But I'll believe it when I see it because, like we mentioned before, he's bulletproof. He just, no matter what. But I think with a different, we can go with the Dana White situation. Nothing happened, but
that's what I was going to say. There's kind of two rules of thought here. On one side, it's like he has lost power in some sense because if he doesn't own the company outright, he could be removed, especially if there's a code of conduct clause in here. They could remove him. But on the other side, look at the track record of Ari. Right. Ari protected Dana. It would have to be something drastically bad for the Endeavor brass to cut him out because they know that's kind of who they paid for, man. If you read that interview, when they bought UFC, they didn't keep the Fertitta brothers. Those were the money guys. They kept Dana because he was the day-to-day operational guy. Yep. They kept him. And they know he is vital to running the company until someone can come in to replace him. Vince is the same way. I don't know if there's a lot of trust that Triple H can run the day-to-day operations. It's one thing to run creative, but I think we'll see. I just don't see them rushing to cut Vince out. I just don't. I think they'll protect him.
Yeah, we shall see. I'm sure it's not the last we'll hear of Vince on wrestling tonight, so stay tuned for that. But we also have Rey Mysterio and Conan talking about the future superstar that eventually, in my opinion, will be in WWE inevitably, and it's Vikingo. He's only 25 years old, and you can make the argument he's not even at the peak of his game yet. But obviously, we're all concerned. We talk about the bumps they're doing. He does that 450 splash where he lands on his back almost every single match where he misses it. But Conan and Rey Mysterio have been talking about slowing it down. And Conan said this on his podcast. Not only have I told him I had Rey Mysterio tell him he already needs a knee operation, and Rey's had 14. So I told him to talk to Rey, and Rey's given him very good advice because I want that guy to last. He's talented and he's a good kid. Conan, and we talked about this on Shot Nostalgia, Conan has been so influential as far as getting these international stars to the main promotions. And people can be critical of Conan on his podcast and be critical of whatever he's done. You have to understand the impact that Conan's had. And a guy like Vikingo, hearing this from Conan and Rey Mysterio, this speaks volumes. And I'm hoping that Vikingo does have the longevity, because I think the only thing stopping him from becoming one of the biggest stars in all of wrestling is longevity. And I think the fact that Rey Mysterio had the longevity just defied logic. The things he was able to do and not get hurt defied logic. But in a lot of ways, Vikingo's doing more than Rey ever did. And I understand it's not 1995 anymore. It's 2023, and Vikingo can learn from Rey, but he does have to slow it down. And I think maybe a WWE run would help him slow it down. But right now, he's on fire, and part of the reason why he's so popular is because his reckless abandon with all of his body. And it's a catch-22. You don't want to stop being you.
Yeah, you hope he listens to legends like this who've been there and been through it. But you know how young people are, man. They they think they've got it figured out, and they've got to learn by falling on their faces too. You know, like I feel like the youth of wrestling right now, that's kind of a problem, is they're not listening to the older generation, and they're pushing it to the fucking limits. And take the advice. You know, I think it's in life in general. You know, when an old person's telling you something and you're young, you feel invincible. You feel unbeatable. You feel like you can't be killed. You're bulletproof. But man, talk about two legends who, especially Rey. I mean, I love Conan. He's a genius. He's Vikingo's boss, essentially, at AAA. He's the booker.
Mm-hmm.
But to hear Rey Mysterio tell you, like, hey, man, I've had 14 knee surgeries. Slow it down. Get that longevity. Make a nice life for yourself.
Even Vikingo moving at 75% is still faster and more impressive.
Oh
than
yeah,
half people
he
in the
doesn't
world,
need to do that every match. He's good.
So we also have the emergence of season 4 of Dark Side of the Ring, the popular and acclaimed series on Vice TV. Variety broke the news Tuesday that season 4 will premiere Tuesday, May 30th, 10 p.m. We're going to get an expanded 14-episode run. We're going to have Chris Jericho again narrating the episodes. Some of the topics will be controversial and insightful as far as conversations, but we got Chris Candido and Tammy Sunny Sitch, the car accident that eventually derailed the career of Magnum TA. We get the troubled life of Marty Jannetty, and we also have Abdullah the Butcher, among others. So PW Insider previously reported that we're going to get stuff on Bam Bam Bigelow, Mike Awesome. It'll be interesting to see how season 4 plays out, because all the controversy that happened with season 3, where people were speak about just saying things like Ric Flair was essentially canceled because of Dark Side of the Ring. So,
yeah, and I feel like a lot of people turned their back on that show. A lot of people in the industry is like, I'm not going to be interviewed by them anymore. I like the guys behind it. I think they did that episode was rough to watch, but.
Well, Tommy Dreamer got in huge trouble for that too, where he essentially wasn't able to take bookings because of the fire that he was defending. It's like, I'm curious to see how many people are able to get on there and speak their mind because of all the fallout.
Tommy Dreamer, I think he was gone from Busted Open Radio for months after that. Like he almost got totally canceled over that episode.
Yeah. So we also have MLW Underground to continue airing on Reels at least through May. So their deal to air its weekly Underground TV show on cable channel Reels was rumored to only be a 10-week trial, with WWE exclusivity on Peacock, keeping MLW from airing on the Peacock platform. Many thought the deal was not long. So drama between WWE and MLW. There's a lot of this in the newsletter this week talking about really MLW's claim that WWE is trying to take food out of their mouths and all that. So we'll see what happens. This has been a good platform from MLW, but it seems like it's an uphill climb that they're consistently getting that mudslide down, taking their legs out from under them, and we'll see where they go from here.
It's the story that keeps giving. MLW and Reels and WWE. Let's see where it goes.
Well, the thing is, too, you got to consider the American TV deal for pretty much, they have the third best deal as far as eyes on the product.
Huge.
So, I mean, with the Impact of New Japan Pro Wrestling being on Access TV, 128th place as far as metrics and how the networks are measured. But according to Variety, Reels jumped a whopping 107% in 2022, putting at 51st place, which is huge. And especially with, if you had to say what is the bigger promotion, I think everybody would say Impact. But as far as eyes on the product, there's more eyes on MLW than Impact on any given week, but they're doing weekly programming. And that says a lot about the deal that they kind of carved, which means why they're so defensive about keeping it.
Absolutely. I think Reels, I think, benefited off of that cop show they had that's super popular. I think it's like Live PD or something like that. And it blew them up and their ratings went through the roof. So if I was MLW, I would be fighting for that too.
So we also have another sort of contract conversation, and Conan said on his podcast that he had said that Kenny Omega had signed a new deal. And Meltzer denied that, saying Conan did an interview and it got people thinking Omega had signed a new contract, and Kenny Omega is under contract to AEW. His contract was extended because he was out for, I think, 9 months due to injuries. Meltzer continued, so I believe that he's under contract until around November or December, and that's the situation, but there was no new deal that's been signed. There's conversation potentially. I mean, there's also, this is tied with the Punk story. If a guy like Kenny Omega has had enough, not just with the Punk, but maybe with the stuff and the drama, and there was a little feeling I wanted to go over to WWE and do things there. There's no deal signed, so we got to wait. And we've seen injury time tacked on to these deals, the Brian Cage thing and the Santana thing that we just talked about. We're seeing the structures of these AEW contracts having injury time added on, and this is the same thing with Kenny Omega.
I'll say this, man. I'm not on any team, but if Young Bucks and Omega strong arm Tony into a contract situation where if they have to do a storyline with Punk, they won't re-sign, that's bullshit.
Agreed. Yeah.
That's some bullshit tactics. And all I got to say about that is, like, Omega, Bucks, go to WWE. Go. Like, do you think they will be used properly? I know everyone's like, well, look how they use Cody. Dude, the Bucks would not be the Bucks in WWE.
I think Kenny has a bigger shot because of the AJ Styles thing. I think they showed with AJ Styles they're willing to book him. I don't think the Bucks would present it the way we want them to. I think Kenny does. Kenny looks like, Vince's dream, his body type right now.
Yeah, I just think he would even be neutered. His style, like,
I agree. Yeah.
I don't want to see Kenny Omega the way he's going to throw a V trigger in WWE. I'm good. I don't want to see that.
We also have more signings. So this is like, it seems like Christmas for signings while WWE allegedly has a freeze. Everybody else is signing people. Impact Wrestling signed a whole bunch of guys. So I'll run through it quick. The Motor City Machine Guns have re-signed. The rising knockout star Kylan King has signed. Tom Hannafin, he's now going to be continuing his time with Impact as the new voice of Impact. Obviously, everyone knows Hannafin as Tom Phillips. And Jody Threat signed a deal. She's a top-ranked indie wrestler, and prior to signing with Impact, she was known for her work in Winnipeg Pro Wrestling, Defy, Limitless, and other strong independent promotions. So people that want to talk about who she is and what she's done, she had her stiff-ass match with Athena in AEW that pretty much has been the launch and catalyst for Athena's new character.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's sick, and I'm very happy to hear she's going to be an Impact.
Yeah, I love Jody Thread. I remember seeing, like, when AEW first launched, I was always looking at, like, the top 50 indie wrestlers in the country or in the world, and she was always ranked right up there in the top. So Jody Threat finally getting a contract with a national act, that's awesome.
Speaking of women wrestlers, right, Mercedes Moné making her debut, an appearance on Stardom. So she wasn't waiting until the All-Star Grand Queendom to make her first appearance for Stardom. It's always been rumored that she's going to be a part of Stardom. So, and with their tie with Bushi Road, like, I don't know if you consider this a debut, but she appeared at Saturday's Cinderella Tournament Finals, attacking Mayu Iwatani. She was in the ring wearing a disguise and was cutting a promo. Iwatani was cutting a promo in the 6-woman tag team match. So,
Yeah, we have a clip of it if you guys want to just check out what happened. Pretty cool.
yeah.
それだけ火をつけてくれたというわけですね。ちょっと待って。なんだ。
誰
謎の人物が岩田に動けない。スタンダムジャージ。ちょっと待ってくださいよ。もうね会いたく一撃。いや体験では岩谷が蹂躙されました。なんと直前代々木でもか。
Oh, we're getting Monet versus Iwatani for the IWGP Women's Championship at Stardom's All Grand Queendom on Sunday, April 23rd. It's going to be held at the Yokohama Arena. Some interesting comments in the newsletter this week, and Meltzer was talking about the impact or lack thereof of Monet on New Japan's business, and saying that comparing her to Jericho, when Jericho first came over and he brought over his existing fan base, whether it be in the States from other things, WCW or WWE, he brought over those fans. And he was saying just by the early numbers, Mercedes has not made that impact. And just as like watching it objectively and not really even looking at the numbers, it feels like it does not have the buzz I thought it would have. And I don't know. And he was very critical of her match that she had, that she's not able up to par with any of the Stardom women. Just curious what your thoughts are. She, that match she had recently, just she wasn't able to keep up. And I think she's still a very good wrestler, but I think it was the commentary of the level of wrestling in the United States compared to the level of wrestling in Japan for women. It's just, it's two different worlds, and she's trying to like kind of learn on the fly.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. One, I think it's WWE fans, for the most part, the casual, like her fan base, her rabid WWE fan base, I don't think they're as tapped into like New Japan. I'm sure there are some, obviously, but I don't think they're as tapped into New Japan. And two, and I don't mean to sound any certain way when I say this, but Chris Jericho going to face Okada, going to face Omega versus Sasha Banks going to face Kairi Sane and Girls in Stardom. I mean, anyone who thought that was going to make the impact that Chris Jericho did going to face Kenny Omega is insane. Like, there's no way. It's light years different. When Jericho went to face Omega, it was that's huge.
Yeah.
I just don't think the women's division, especially New Japan's women's division, hasn't been like really around, has it? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
like
the IWGP Women's Championship was fairly new, and that match they had with AZM and Hazuki, they like what I took away from watching that match was how far behind she is in the pacing. You see like the two of them locking up, and Hazuki and AZM, they look like the men's wrestling we're seeing in Japan, very strong, fast, and she is the bar for women's wrestling in the United States in a lot of ways. As far as wrestlers go, people can make the claim she was the best women wrestler in the world in the United States, but she's light years behind even like younger talent in Stardom. And that, I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just like, even watching that match, I was like, holy shit, Hazuki was wrestling circles around her. It was like watching, a novice versus someone who has been doing it their whole life, when it was really the reverse at this point. It's insane.
That's that WWE style, man. Yeah, I think it neuters wrestlers. I think when wrestlers go there, their style gets neutered. And when wrestlers who have always been there leave, there's a glaring hole. I do not enjoy the WWE style of pro wrestling. As far as like everything looks so just slow. I don't know why it looks slow to me, but it seems so slow. What is that, Ace? Like what is the do you feel like, what do you feel about the style that they,
Well, if we're comparing it to Jericho at this point, Jericho obviously has honed his craft internationally prior to even going to WWE. So he was able to turn it on, turn it off kind of thing. And he always had a very distinct style in WWE, but it wasn't, he was able to turn on that rougher style when he got to
but
New
I'm
Japan
talking
Pro
more
Wrestling.
like, I should clarify. I'm not talking like WWE in general. I'm not talking about the Bret Harts, the Shawn Michaels. I'm talking about performance, people who were born and bred in the PC.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those people who have, maybe they got a little bit of indie and then they went to the PC to get their craft. PC wrestling that bleed into, like Kevin Owens and Sammy, they still have
100%.
that indie in them. That you
Yeah.
can still feel that in them. Seth Rollins, they still have that indie in them. But like guys who really just cut their teeth in the PC, it takes something away from wrestlers to me.
Oh, I agree with you. I think that's the case here. I think the fact that she hadn't worked nowhere prior to this, and NXT is it's still under the umbrella of the PC. So when you see someone have to work a different style and be challenged athletically and psychologically in a different setting, they are exposed. And I think a lot of the WWE thing fits what they do, and they can get emphasized and highlighted and look like an absolute superstar. And she did that. Like in a lot of matches, she shined and she was great at what she did, but it is a commentary on what WWE is producing. And then kudos to them. If they wanted to produce this strong style type of wrestling, they could. I think they have the minds and they could do it, but they have a certain optic that they want their wrestling to look a certain way. And they're working against the grain. It's like a whirlpool going in the other direction. They want these guys to come in with this indie background or international background to work a certain style. And there's certain exceptions to that rule. Obviously, guys have to, a guy like AJ Styles, when he came in, there was a piece of AJ Styles that still brought over that Japanese style wrestling and the Ring of Honor and everything he did in Impact. But as you mentioned before with Kenny Omega, you get toned down because you have to work what they want it to look like. And in a lot of ways, when you leave, I think everyone becomes quite aware of like, holy shit, how slow are they actually moving? You don't realize it in the moment. I mean, maybe some fans do, but when we watch someone like Mercedes go out there, and you can make the same case about Cody. Cody really honed his craft post WWE, and he came back better for it because now he can be more versatile.
He fits that style. Like I feel like his stuff, it just fits.
But he could turn it on, turn it off now. I think he learned to turn it on and then turn it off for WWE. I think over time, Mercedes will be better. And I think working with someone like Hazuki and AZM and Kairi Sane, they're eventually going to make her better. But I think a lot of people thought her coming to New Japan would be like, she's going to help make the young talent better. But it's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
It's insane.
And I think that's fan perspective, though. I think Sasha Mercedes went to New Japan with the right intentions. I think she went there to round her game out. I think she did go there to try something new, to get another, a different layer of the onion of pro wrestling. I think that was her intentions. I don't think she went there to be like, I'm going to show these girls something. I think she went there, these girls are going to show me something.
Yeah. I just think the perception was always from the fans.
100% the fans thought that. Fans thought that she was going to go over there and just everyone was going to bow at the feet. I'm going to be shocked if she sticks around, because I think her deal's coming up fairly soon. It was a short deal, and I'm wondering, does she go back to WWE maybe?
I don't know. Yeah, it's certainly interesting because I went in thinking, especially because she was cream of the crop as far as WWE goes, and her style was like, oh, it would be translated well there. It just hasn't.
No, it hasn't at all. It hasn't at all.
And I think she's really exposed when you watch two women moving miles faster than you. I mean, you know what though? I think she's gonna be better for it, like you mentioned. I think going back eventually when she comes back to WWE or she starts working AEW, she's gonna be better for it after working with these women who the shoot style of these women. If you go watch a Stardom show, holy shit, these women are moving faster and they're hitting harder than any men's promotion you can see. So
the pace, they set a pace, man. That's what I like about Stardom, is just the pace they set.
Yeah. So speaking of New Japan Pro Wrestling, last thing for the quick hitters, they announced an IWGP US title #1 contender tournament. So Will Ospreay is going to be headlining this, but we're also going to get Juice Robinson, Lance Archer, Tanahashi. This will all culminate at Dominion on June 4th, and we're going to figure out who gets the title shot, and it's currently unclear who's going to get the title shot against Omega and when it's going to be. So it could be at Forbidden Door. This could be just setting up Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega 2, because if you do the math, Dominion, the finals will be June 4th. June 27th is Forbidden Door. Sets up the stage perfectly for Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, I hope
in Toronto, by the way.
Yeah, I hope Ospreay and Omega happen at Forbidden Door 2, and they don't. I don't know if I want that match at Wembley. I kind of want that at Forbidden Door 2. I want them to do something bigger that hopefully all parties can come together and make something happen at Wembley, but
yeah.
So.
Well, prior to the injury with Will Ospreay, I think the thing was always Wrestle Kingdom is when you have Will Ospreay, Kenny Omega, where Kenny gets his win, and I think Will Ospreay probably get the title back at Forbidden Door, and I think the wrench thrown into it was this injury with Will Ospreay.
Right.
All right, let's get into Dave Raves. We don't have any matches to talk about, but there was two good things I want to talk about from the newsletter.
Let's do it.
Dave Raves.
All right, Dave's Raves. Two big notes here. And again, the newsletter was great this week, talking about all the Punk stuff. If you want broken down in piecemeal where he's talking about extensively, the newsletter is like 56 pages this week. Most of it about Punk and the Elite and all the other stuff. But one thing he did, and this was sort of just thrown in there and I pulled out from it. New York Times reported that a much talked about merger of Discovery Plus and HBO Max, they're going to be coming into one streaming service. The service would be called The Max, will be $16 a month. Has me thinking they're going to need content. This could be the long-awaited, anticipated AEW streaming service we've been waiting for.
I'm not going to be shocked because they haven't announced that Wembley is a pay-per-view yet. I'm not going to be shocked that that's the bait to get people to sign up for this service. As far as AEW wrestling fans, that AEW with Discovery Plus being attached to it, I think this is the perfect opportunity for a streaming platform for AEW.
And then also in there is a significant eulogy for Bushwhacker Luke, where he talks about all the time as the sheep herders and coming into wrestling and working through adversity, and very, very good insight into the Bushwhackers. That isn't just surface level Wikipedia, what they've accomplished in WWE as the tag team. Goes into his life from Australia and it's in New Zealand and working those territories and promotions. Fascinating read. Check it out. RIP to Bushwhacker Luke, and condolences to his family. Let's get into the week ahead.
The week ahead.
All right, so for the week ahead, Chad, we have Dynamite 419 in Pittsburgh. We have a full card ahead of us, headlined by, we're going to get Jay White versus Commander. We're going to get TNT Championship Powerhouse Hobbs versus Wardlow again. The Acclaimed and Daddy Ass taking on Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Jake Hager. We're going to get an FTR appearance, the Elite speaking, Jericho and Adam Cole coming face to face. What I love about Dynamite, man, they announce it and it happens. I love that shit.
Yeah. I'm interested to see this Powerhouse Hobbs defending against Wardlow, because I'm like, are they going to flip-flop the title again? Like, what's going on here?
On Impact for this week on 420, we're going to get the full out from Rebellion. So as the time you're listening to this, you know who the new world champion is. It's either Steve Macklin or Kushida. Pay-per-view is tonight as we're speaking, Sunday night. So should be a good show. I'm sure it's going to be the fallout, setting new stories and setting the track of whoever's the champion. My prediction, I think Steve Macklin's coming out victorious, and I'll put it out there, but we'll see where they go.
Yeah, there's a really good match for the X Division title. Trey Miguel, Jonathan Gresham, and Mike Speedball Bailey. That'll be a fun match to watch. So, yeah.
So Raw tonight, as you're watching this, 4/17/23, Brock Lesnar returns. Nothing else is announced right now, so we're going to get more of the lead into Brock Lesnar versus Cody at Backlash in Puerto Rico, and probably going to get more setting stone of Rey Mysterio and Bad Bunny teaming up against Judgment Day, Dominic and Damian Priest with Rhea or Finn in their corner. So we'll see where they go for Backlash. It's in a few weeks at this point, so they got to start putting some matches together.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, Raw's kind of. I feel like they haven't capitalized off the Mania. I feel like Mania I was on such a high off of Mania, and I feel like I've dipped down again.
So for SmackDown on Friday, we're going to get Gunther versus Xavier Woods for the IC title, and they announced 2 weeks from now will be the rematch for the tag titles, the Usos versus Sammy and KO. So not this week, but on the 28th, they're going to be having that match. Not sure where it's emanating from, but Gunther versus Xavier for the IC title. There's been some conversation. We haven't really mentioned him here, but LA Knight he lost to Xavier Woods on SmackDown this week. There's been some conversation about using the momentum he's built to win Money in the Bank and eventually have him being a main guy. And they're trying, we know calling card events is they love to get behind an underdog and have him lose until they eventually see him win. But we'll see where it goes. I think LA Knight plays a part in the IC title.
LA Knight with the Money in the Bank briefcase. That could be perfect. I love that idea. Dude's got he's always had a mouthpiece, so I think that's a good move.
But that's all we got, Chad. So let's hype up some stuff going on in the debate. You and I were talking off air a little bit about it. What's going on in the debate? What's going on the rest of the week for Hawks in town? Are you guys going to be talking about some of your adventures? I know you guys are recording Broken VCR today, all that stuff.
Yeah, we got we're recording a couple episodes of BVCR today. We got the debate dropping. Well, the debate, as you're listening to this, the debate's already dropped. Frames was a guest. Some fun stuff on there. We talk ROH, fun topics. What else do we got going? We got the new studio set up. Well, getting set up. At Sneed's new spot for the flagship show. Everything's rolling, man. TheTurnbuckleTavern.com. Go check it out. Give us some support, especially on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.
Appreciate the love. Got nostalgia this Friday. Check out Honor Society, myself and Colton. And also visits the tavern this week. I'm going to be interviewing nobody's better than Michael Mastretta on Friday. That I believe the audio is going to drop this Wednesday, but video will follow Shad Nostalgia as we've done in the past. And can't wait to talk with him. And as I'm recording, I'm going to be chatting with him this afternoon. So talking about NYWC and everything going on there, a former world champion. So going to be really, really good conversation. Don't miss it.
That's awesome. Yeah. And just a tease. We like teasing things. The tavern has some fun things in store, guys. So hold tight. Cool things are coming, new things. Just keep it locked here at the tavern.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys. And Chad, let's tell them how they should leave it.
Leave it, keep it, hold it, snug, stiff. Guys, next week we bring you more news. We'll see you then.
Reach for the sky, boy.